People come to a counselor or to a tapping practitioner, they come because they've made a bad decision and they don't know how to get out, or they come because they don't know how to make a decision. Right. They don't know how to go forward. So they're very unclear and they're not connected or aligned to their own decision-making process.
This is Gene Monterestelli, and welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, recorded live to tape from Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This is episode 495, originally aired January 22nd, 2021. Hi, everyone. I hope this finds you well wherever you are and whatever time of day you're getting a chance to listen to this. Every single week on the podcast, we answer the most common and uncommon questions about tapping so you can get the most out of your tapping practice. You can move past the basic recipe to start to master the art of delivery. You'll find root causes faster, clear issues quicker, and have longer lasting results. Today, we are going to be talking about a really simple process to help you to get clear so it's easier for you to take action. Before we do that, I just want to send a big shout out and thank you to all of the supporters of the Tapping Q&A podcast. If you have not seen it already, I sent a message earlier today with a link to 56 tap-along audios that are a little bonus for all of the supporters. If you would like to support the Tapping Q&A podcast, receive regular bonuses and little secret bonuses like they're getting today, all you need to do is go to tappingqa.com/support. That's tappingqa.com/support. So today's podcast is a conversation with my friend Carol Look, and Carol shares with us a really simple 3-step process that she calls the Yes Code, because it is really difficult for us to take action and move in a direction that is useful if we are not clear about what we want. That oftentimes we feel like we're stuck in taking action because it feels like the action is hard, but if we're not in line with the action and in line with the direction that we're going, then resistance is going to show up, and it's going to present us from moving forward. One of the things that I've come to recognize and have found myself saying to clients quite a lot recently is resistance is a story to keep us safe. And if your subconscious mind is worried that you're heading in the wrong direction because it's not in line with who you are or you're not clear about it, then it's going to create that resistance and it's going to make action feel much harder. And so this very simple process that Carol shares is going to help you to uncover the issues and show you how to tap for them to help you to get clearer inside of this. One quick note before we step into this, you will notice that my audio quality in this interview is not the best. It doesn't do you very good to have fabulous microphones and a great setup to do a recording if you do not turn on the correct microphone when you are recording. And so over the course of this interview, I had a beautiful microphone pointed directly at my face, and the microphone that is recording me is the microphone that is built into my laptop that was about 3 feet away from my face. The audio is really clear enough, so it's going to be fine. It's just going to sound a little different than what you're hearing from me right now. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Carol Look about the Yes Code. One of the things I know is that when you are working with people, you and I jive together because we're very practical. That we don't use tapping just for the sake of tapping, but it is an amazing tool that gives us space to create opportunity, to make new choices, to be bolder, to understand about ourselves. So when you are working with clients and you're trying to get them in that capacity, what is your approach? How do you step into something like that?
Well, I first try to get them to understand that without clarity, they're not going anywhere. Right?
Yeah.
And so I have a method called the Yes Code where I help them through steps so that they can get their clarity. They ultimately get their next yes.
Right.
Because what they're doing is they're coming to me. You know how people come to a counselor or to a tapping practitioner. They come because they've made a bad decision and they don't know how to get out, or they come because they don't know how to make a decision.
Right.
They don't know how to go forward. They've been convinced on the internet you should do A, B, and C. So they're very unclear and they're not connected or aligned to their own decision-making process.
And it's interesting you say that. I want to step into your steps in just a moment. But it's really interesting that people are really, really good at knowing what they don't want, and they're really, really bad at knowing what they do want. Like, how would you like this to change? And you just kind of get this, I don't know. And I don't know if it's just that because we're caught in resistance is hard, or It's a skill that we recognize that we need to step into. But I think you're absolutely right. Like it's impossible to get anywhere if we don't know the direction we want to head. And we need to get past this is the thing that is wrong and getting to what is going on. So with that being said, what's the process? How do you walk folks through that?
Well, the first step is clarify your vision. And while that can sound like, a phrase that's been around for a while, you'd be shocked at how many people still don't get it or still don't know how to do that.
Yep.
And so underneath what you were just saying, that, people are really good at knowing what they don't want. They also, the next layer is they're afraid to be clear. And I didn't know that until how many hundreds of thousands of people came to me, and I had it too, of course.
Right.
This fear of being clear. So they avoid the vision. They avoid saying what they want. They're afraid of other people's reactions. So then forget any other steps or any other behavior. They can't get clear because they don't want to. There is a negative consequence in their mind, in their perception of being clear. I've had people say, well, if I get clear, I'm going to have to leave the marriage. Really?
Right.
If I get clear, I'm moving to California. If I get clear, I'm going to have to, fill in the blank. And that's the actual sticking point.
Yeah, and I agree with that 100%. I see that as well. And I also think there's kind of an additional part to that I've dealt with clients who have said, I've had a vision in the past and I worked really hard for it and I failed. And I don't want to get my hopes up and fail again. And so another type of resistance that can come to doing this sort of thing is, like, if I name this, I can let myself down. And if I'm not moving towards something, then there's no way I can get in trouble because I'm not moving towards anything and I can't have my hopes dashed. Right.
And they haven't dealt with the trauma of putting a vision out there and it not coming to fruition, and that disappointment and that frustration, and what to them they might bring to you and say, I just feel like a failure. It didn't work. So what is this process that, this air quotes doesn't work? We get that, right? You and I get that a lot.
Yeah. So then I know how I do it. I want to hear how you do this. What are the ways that when they're struggling to get clarity that you start to, because there's two parts to this. There's the practical part, like how do I write a goal? Like that is an actual skill that sometimes we underestimate. And the other part is the emotional component to it, why we're afraid to or why we're incapable of doing it. What is your process, or what are the questions you ask to help people to figure out what the emotional blocks are in being able to just get clear?
Get clear first. So I'll say to them, so what's the downside of being clear? And they'll say, what?
Yeah.
And then before you know it, they've got a list of 10 things, 10 reasons that being clear feels threatening. And when someone feels threatened, there goes the primitive brain and they're off the races. And they can't possibly come up with a picture, a vision, a feeling. We're all into the vision and but really the feeling. How do you want to feel when you reach your goal? How do you want your life to look? People aren't doing enough lifestyle goal setting, right? Is all like, oh, I want the house, the car, the whatever. And how do you want your life to feel, look, and be for you? Mm-hmm. And then the list of the upside, downside, what's so scary about it? And many people will say, I've never been asked that, believe it or not.
Right.
Been to coaching for years, never been asked that. And then they're so startled by the fact that they're afraid to be clear because they think they've been trying to be clear for a decade.
Right. Yeah. And both those things can be true. They actually could be putting in the effort, but they're trying to solve a practical problem when it's an emotional problem. When the issue is there's an emotion in the way that's allowing me to do this. And so it's not that I need a different goal writing formula. It's I need to create the space that I feel safe in doing that particular thing.
Exactly. So getting clear on why you're afraid to be clear is one of the main steps.
Awesome. Okay, great. So we figured that out. We tapped through that sort of stuff. We now have capacity for clarity, and we have some clarity. What then is step number 2?
Continue to look at the blocks. So let's say they reduce that fear of being clear and they get the goal or the vision, or this is what I want my lifestyle to look like or my life to look like. Then deeper blocks come up. Oh, but yes, this could happen. And oh, but yes, somebody's afraid of jealousy. Somebody's afraid they'll be successful and then fall again, right? So there's another again in there. So it's really releasing more blocks and sabotage, because somebody can get very clear and start the process. And before you know it, the procrastination is rearing its head, right?
Yeah. So the first part is the resistance to the clarity. The second part is the resistance or consequences that I might perceive of actually taking action and being successful along the way.
Right. So step one, clarify your vision, and you have to get to all the blocks to that. Step two is release the blocks. Right. And really get to the heart of it. Because what I find is people are coming in and saying, well, the internet says I should do this, or I went to an expert marketer who said this, or my sister, brother, mother's father said this. And you have to really have your vision and your life. And that sounds so obvious. Are you kidding? But people aren't. People are saying, well, didn't you see so-and-so's expert marketing webinar? So there's that sense of aligning with yourself. So when you clarify your vision, when you're releasing your blocks, if you don't have procrastination, I'm not talking you into it. You've got to release your blocks and really say, oh, now I see, and that feeling of alignment.
Yeah, and it's interesting inside of that. There's this one piece where we have experts that are telling us something. The other thing is the stories that we tell about ourselves because of whatever collective we're a part of. The men in my family always, the people, insert ethnic group, were always like this. And if we pull those things into the light of day and we look at them, we recognize that they're generalizations that may have some truth to them, may not, but it doesn't necessarily mean because I associate with that collective, I have to own that particular identity. And if the other piece of that, like one is we take it as truth. The other part is there's a part of us that wants to be part of the clan and the tribe. And if I am claiming some independence from this identity, then I'm letting go of these other people. Like I'm getting outside of that, and there can be consequences to that. One time, it was an amazing piece of clarity. I had a client who wanted to lose weight, and she said, I've heard how my friends talk about fat people, how my friends talk about skinny people. And if I lose weight, they're going to say the exact same things about me. And of course, there is a major block to being successful and not taking the action I want to take because I don't want to lose my friends. And so I'm going to get in the way of being able to move forward in that particular way.
Absolutely. The loyalty issue. So if someone has that group of friends and they're struggling with that, think of the loyalty issue and the bonds that are built from childhood.
Absolutely.
So their family's not been successful. Their father went bankrupt. Their mother never had a job. Their sister is struggling, et cetera, et cetera. And then they think, wait a minute, if I do this process, you mean I will be successful? Oh yes, because you can't not. If you release the blocks, this is what happens energetically and physically in the world, right?
Yeah.
What starts to happen, you start to move the pieces around, right?
Yep.
So the loyalty of being just like my family, failing, being mediocre, people are very wed to, C plus, B minus, I'm okay. I'm okay. I want people to be joyful.
And it's that tolerable middle where, like, part of being stuck in that tolerable middle is that we like predictability, even if we're getting predictability mediocre, because at least I know what is coming, and I've built tools, as adequate or inadequate as those are. I've built tools to navigate my day as I deal with that stuff. And if I start doing something different, then it means there are going to be new things that challenge me. And I don't know if I can handle those. And being stuck in mediocre is the exchange of predictable. And so it makes sense consciously, but more often subconsciously, why we want to stay stuck in that particular way.
Nobody wants the unknown, right?
Yeah.
Why do you think people stay in a job that is miserable? Like, they don't want to stop complaining and get a new job. They just want to stay there and complain because they know who the players are.
Yeah.
Relationships, jobs, cities, I don't care where people are staying.
Yeah.
The stuckness is about, yes, but I know what kind of stuckness I'm in.
Yeah. Unpredictability feels unsafe, and fear always wins.
Yes.
Okay, great. So then what's the third step?
So then the third step is actually find your next yes.
Okay.
And what I've also found is that people are trying to bite off more than they can chew. So they're trying to get the end result in a week. Well, let's talk, let's be honest, people, that's not going to happen. So you have to find a way to go inside and get aligned with what feels like a yes to you. Mm-hmm. Now we bump up against, again, somebody else wants me to do this. Somebody else thinks I should. The case of the shoulds is all over the place. So then people feel an inkling inside of what direction to go, and they're embarrassed, or they're worried their partner will say, don't do that, or they're worried that they'll stand out. I was working with someone yesterday who's so afraid of visibility that even though she got her yes and she knows exactly what it is, she backtracked.
Right.
Because the yes will make her quite visible and quite successful. And for her, that means then I'll be a target of some kind.
Right.
Right. So find your next yes. So there's a big process there of being able to say, oh, that's a no to me. That's what that feels like. And this is what a yes feels like. Well, what does a maybe feel like? A maybe for me is not today.
Yeah.
A no for today. So that's really important because we have been talked out of, I would say my clients and I and everybody I know, we've had years of being talked out of our yes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hungry. Don't be silly. You can't be. You just ate. I'm cold.
Right.
Don't be ridiculous. It's not cold in here. Other people innocently and sometimes not so innocently argue with a feeling that is literally in our body, mind, and soul.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be afraid of that.
Yeah.
Gone to a funeral recently. Oh, don't worry. At least he's in a better place now. There are many things that people say to negate whatever emotion is coming up.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that. One of the things I've realized about myself is in a relationship, I will tolerate lots of things. The thing I no longer tolerate is someone telling me how I should be feeling or telling me I don't feel that way. No, you don't feel like that. Like that is something that I've become really self-aware of. And the thing that in that self-awareness, it has just made me crystal clear when that's happening to simply say, you're allowed to disagree with me and you're allowed to think that I'm wrong, but I'm not going to tolerate you invalidating my feelings about what is going on right now. And I'm going to own my feelings, and they might be disproportionate, and they might be misinformed, but what I have just said is actually true about my experience in this particular moment, and we need to grapple with that inside of what is going on right here. And it's led to some really tough short-term conversations, and it has been really liberating because I have not had one of those conversations that has ended badly. They have been difficult having them, but all of them have had a positive consequence on the other side because we're just like at just being able to stake that place. And if we're not willing to claim that, then part of that becomes we start buying into the story someone else is telling us about what is true and what is not about our experience. And we are the expert in our own experience.
It's an awesome place to be, to have that freedom. The other thing I know from years and years of just being a psychotherapist as well as a coach is that it's called internalized objects, which means whatever you heard and were taught, you come by it naturally. So I say you grow up in France, you speak French. So if you grow up in a family or a society that says, oh, Jean, don't be silly. You don't have to react that way. You don't have to feel that way. You can't help it. You start doing it to yourself.
Yep.
So then you've internalized what the other people have said to you. So we're the ones who are actually saying to ourselves, oh, I shouldn't feel this way. How many clients say to you, well, I know I shouldn't feel this way, but I fill in the blank, right? So we do it to ourselves until we get the stoplight and we say, you know what? I'm done. I'm not doing that anymore, at the risk of relationships that might be rocky for a while, or, you've had wonderful experiences where people say, it's a hard conversation. Everybody agrees. But at the end, it's like, I got it. I get it. So that's a wonderful outcome. But some people are not able to tolerate the conversation or you have your feelings and I'm allowed to have mine, because what do we know about human nature and human beings? We run from intensity. Intensity. Right?
And I saw scrolling through Instagram this morning, and I'm going to get the quote wrong because I don't have it in front of me at this particular moment, but it was something along the line of, it is our ethical responsibility to overcome the stories that we were given inside of the culture that we are raised within. Mm-hmm. And I think it's so important to recognize the things that we pick up unconsciously that are stories that we simply assume are true. Because, like you said, the sense that it is so internalized because of when it was written into our experience, it feels as true as, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, because it's just this fact that has always been there. I think that's the hardest work, is being able to identify the things that are operative reality but aren't actually reality. Because operative reality, we operate from it as if it is reality, and being able to disentangle that is really difficult. And I also think that's one of the reasons why it's so important that, I know I do this myself, is to work with a practitioner with my own stuff. is because I am so close to my own story. It's good to have someone go, oh, it's really interesting that you're saying this is true. Let's examine whether or not the story you were telling about your life is actually true. And not telling me I'm wrong, but encouraging me to investigate gives me the opportunity to go, oh yeah, that is a cultural thing that I've picked up that no longer serves me and I'm allowed to put it down. But that's a hard thing to do from the inside out.
Which is why I love it when someone says, that's an interesting question, right? So ask the questions in the coaching relationship and the tapping relationship, and people say, well, I don't know. Let me think about it. Excellent. I don't know what the answer. I'm not looking for the right answer. There is no right answer. It's, have you examined this from the point of view that perhaps your family taught you that success is not okay? Have you examined this from the point of view that you're not allowed to have your yes because it rocks the boat?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And I love asking the question like they tell me something. Like, okay, great. So how do you know that's true? And you see them go internally. And my favorite thing in the world is just kind of see like this, like, well, this little, when they kind of tilt their head back a little bit, and it's like, oh, right. Like you can actually see it on their face as it dawns on them where this idea came from. And they instantaneously have a new relationship to this belief because they don't just have the belief, they have the place that it came from. Now, they might choose to keep the belief, but by having this new insight, it gives them the opportunity to interrogate its usefulness. And I think that, for me, that's the word that's really important. It's not right or wrong. Does this belief serve me in who I want to be? And if it no longer serves me, then I need to let it go and find the belief that is useful. And it's not telling me that my past is wrong, telling me that the people who gave me the story are wrong. It just isn't right for me now, and it's not useful.
Right. And I love asking them also, do you think you made a vow against this? I was working with someone with trust issues. And at what age do you think you vowed that all men are this, all women are this?
Yeah.
When did you make a vow that you'll never make more money than your siblings? When did you make the vow? Because we don't just make them under age 10.
Right.
Talk about that time period all the time. We can make them at any age. We could make a vow 3 months ago, never to hurt somebody by showing our progress, or never to. So those questions are so important because they give space and airtime. We human beings don't have enough airtime because they have been controlled within an inch of their lives, myself included, all their lives. Don't feel this, don't do this, go to school, whatever it is, do it properly, air quotes, do it right, do it politely. And then there's no room to even say, as you were saying, investigate.
Yep.
How about if you investigate that feeling of fear? Nobody wants to go there. How about if you investigate that feeling of envy, or that feeling of being afraid of being a target? All the stuff we do with tapping and coaching that helps people put on a different pair of glasses to really see what works for them. That expression that people say, well, that doesn't work for me. Good. So what's not working for you? So they say that to somebody, they say it to a friend, oh, that doesn't work for me. Well, what's not working for you? I have to examine, well, what's not working for me anymore?
Yeah, and all the stuff that we do, like, that's my favorite question. How's it working for you? Right. Like, if it is, keep doing it. If not, do something else. The other thing that's really important as we tap into this idea of vows is that when we are making vows, and our subconscious mind is notorious at this, is vows are black and white. They leave no capacity for nuance, because nuance costs us energy. Like, thinking, we don't realize it, but thinking costs so much energy for all those neurons and synapses to be firing. I mean, it's the reason why I'm in circumstances where I'm learning something new at the end of a really difficult class, even though it's fun. It's just like, oh my gosh, I felt like I ran a marathon, because I'm using so much energy to do it. Right. And our subconscious mind and the habits we create are just, they're an energy saving tactic. Like, the body is learning these things so it can use the energy to keep ourselves safe and do these other things by not having to remember how to do the thing we do over and over again. And because of that, it becomes so black and white. And so it is always this, or it's never this, or I'm not going to do this, or I'm going to do this. And my life is so much more nuanced than that. And if I'm applying black and white to a nuanced daily existence, then we're going to bump into the type of stuff you're talking about.
Never and always are often people's favorite.
Absolutely.
Because they create the safety, as you're saying, they create a box where I'm never going to do this, I'm never going to do that, I always do this, all people like this or that. And it does create some sense of predictability. We're back to that again.
Yep.
Predictability, safety. At least I know where I'm going.
That's right.
right?
I know where I stand. Yep.
Don't give me a detour. Oh, heaven forbid there is a detour, right?
That's right.
I want to go the same way day after day. That's what we do. That's human, right?
And when people are doing that, I just think back to my NLP meta modeling training of this idea of generalization. And so anytime I hear an always, a never, and everybody, my responding question is always one word long. Always? Everyone? Never? And that's all the question has to be. And just by poking at the one word, not even the entire thing, you can see them starting to deconstruct as they're now consciously thinking about this thing and going, okay, it isn't that everybody at work hates me. It's that so-and-so and so-and-so do. And then you get to deconstruct the word hate and see if that's actually the right word as well. But just by looking, it's just really key for all of us. Anytime we are using an absolute to put ourselves in a situation to start interrogating the absolute, the sun rises in the east. Okay, that's an absolute. I always have to work out before 10 a.m. Really? Always? Like, just giving ourselves the chance, the opportunity to start asking the question gives us an amazing insight into why emotionally we're responding the way that we're responding.
And let's look at the one that people say, I'll never forgive her. I'll never forgive him, right? So the never and the always go with every emotion, every situation, childhood, adolescent, early teens, any part of our life, we can come up with one. And people often say, oh, well, that one doesn't apply. Right.
Right.
The always and the never is good for other things, but not for their always and never.
That's right. Yeah.
We're very wed to our particular always and nevers.
Absolutely. Because again, it becomes our operative reality. So then I guess what it sounds like then, as we're getting to the next yes, then it just becomes this recursive process. I get clarity, I figure out what the blocks are, I figure out what the identity piece are, I get all that stuff clear, which means I take a step forward, which means I then have to ask the question, what is the next step? And I need to get clarity about that. And then it just becomes this recursive process as we just keep moving through the steps over and over again.
And helps with the trust factor. Right. This is why when people say, get your 5-year goal and they set something up that's 5 years or 10 years from now, it's too big. They're not going to get there in a week. It's not going to happen. So the small steps do get you there, but the steps have to be built on a solid foundation. Right. Which is, this is 100% yes for me. And someone said, well, I don't know if I should say, if you don't know you should say that yet, that's a no. Right. Yeah, but the time, people always get caught where they say the time window is closing. Right. And then that puts a fire under them and they make a decision that is wrong, meaning they're not happy with it. Right. 3 months later, 6 months later, a year later. I had a client who said, well, I have to move in with my boyfriend because our leases are up. Not a good reason to move in with the guy who you already think has an alcohol problem, right? So, but the time starts to close and we get anxious and fearful. And then we don't go through a process that trusts our knowing and trusts our alignment. And sure enough, how many times are we making decisions that are not good for us, right? And when we are hesitant to make choices, oftentimes the impetus in our life to make choices is a sense of urgency. Therefore, we're training ourselves to do stuff. Like I work with clients who are writers regularly, and they always say, well, I always do my best work at the last minute. And if you're comparing doing no work to doing work at the last minute, you're absolutely right. Doing it at the last minute is better than not doing it at all. But I'm going to argue with you that if you gave this 3 or 4 drafts and you spent more time on it, you didn't do it at the last minute, it would actually be a better thing that you are producing. But because we're so bad at taking action because of all of these things that are unconscious and subconscious that we're talking about, we come to believe that urgency is the only way that we're going to make a choice because those are the only times we are making choices. And by getting clear in this way, we're able to, there are times in which we need to make choices in a short term. There are actually windows that close. But by doing what you're saying is we're getting away from that being the only motivating factor that actually gets us to make a choice and move forward. That and being still. So I did a newsletter on this and I got more comments than most newsletters. And people are hitting the send button. They're making telephone calls. They're reacting to something without being quiet and peaceful. So people don't take the time to listen to themselves. So coaching and therapy and counseling, an enormous piece of it is listening so deeply to the client that the client starts to hear themselves. Yeah. Some people enter coaching and that's all about what's the coach going to say and do. And it's not about that. Right. It's about that connection first. Well, guess what? If you don't have the connection with yourself, you're going to hit the send button before you should be hitting the send button, right? You're going to say something on Facebook that you're going to go, darn it, I wish I hadn't said that.
And I wish I remembered who this was, because I need to give them proper credit. It was a book of someone who was over 100 years ago, but they had created a room in their house. It was like just basically a closet that had a desk and a chair and a light that had a little pull string to turn the light on and off, and the room was perfectly dark. And every single day for a half hour or an hour, he would sit in the darkness and just think. And when he had an idea or a piece of inspiration or something he needed to do, he would turn the light on and he would write it down on the piece of paper that was in front of him, and then turn the light back off and just sit in silence. And just created the space, and sometimes brought really intentional things in there, a decision that needed to be made, a response that needed going on. And other times it was just, let my mind wander. I'm going to give my brain 30 or 60 minutes to just noodle around and listen to what is going on interiorly and take notes about that thing that then dictated what he did and how he structured his day and how he structured his life. And like, we're so crap at just being still.
I don't know who that is, but the famous story, of course, is also about Lincoln, who would write letters so angry about his opponents, people who've crossed him, people who were arguing with him, people who that he didn't agree with, people who had done horrible things, and he'd write the letter and put it in the drawer and not send it. Could we all please not send? I have seen things, not directed at me, but I have seen things that I think, did you really intend to send that one, that message? You know, people are sending me a chain and saying, I'm having this fight with someone. Can you help? Can you be the mediator? You know, we do a coaching session to mediate. And I think in your right mind, you were not in your right mind when you push send. And how do I know? Because I've done it too.
Yeah, I actually have a frustrated email that has been sitting in my draft folder for 4 days. It is someone who was providing a service for me that I paid a significant amount of money, and part of the service has been fabulous, and part of it has not. Like, it's basically I hired an expert to do something for me, and for part of his response was, "Oh, just play around with the tool; you'll figure it out." And I'm like, "No, that's not the reason why I hired you. I hired you because I want you to use your expertise so that I can do this really, really well." But and every morning for the last 4 days, I have opened it up, and there's a little red dot in my draft folder saying it's there. And I know the tone of it isn't right, and I haven't figured out exactly how to respond yet. So I have this draft message just sitting there, and at some point I might say, I might just give over it. Like, that's also a possibility as well. But I've been really clear about just giving myself space to respond in a way that is thoughtful and useful, not to cause problems. And you can actually get a useful, beneficial outcome. It's not even that I don't want to rock the boat. I want to have a good, authentic conversation that we both get a win out of.
Yes, and that clarity is so important. It reminds me of another story when we were talking about not being clear and feeling the urgency. I was coming back from France after a workshop. I was exhausted. We had been traveling. I had a terrible cold, really a bad cold. And there was a deadline for a marketing contract. And I was so urgent about, I have to sign this and get this marketing stuff done, that I ignored that I was on Sudafed. I ignored that I had been on a 7-hour flight, that I was totally jet lagged, and that something didn't feel right about this relationship with this marketing person. No, I signed. And of course it was extremely expensive because not only did they not deliver, apparently I signed a contract that basically said I have to pay even if they don't deliver. My friend said, did you read the contract? You got off the plane before you even signed it. And the point being, urgency made me distracted and made me leave my center. You have to be centered first before you do anything. Choose a coach. You and I do a lot of weight loss work. You've got to be centered before you open the refrigerator, or guess what? I don't care what eating plan you're on. If you do not get centered with your feelings and with your heart, you will choose the wrong anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Friendship, right? Marketing director, anything So it's just so important to have that clarity and have that feeling of, regardless of how people will react or respond to me, I know in my heart of hearts, that expression, my heart of hearts, this is right for me. And there's risks in that. People get hurt,
absolutely,
get offended, people get all sorts of feelings themselves, and they don't tap or they don't get quiet before they respond.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, great. Thank you, Carol, very much for sharing your process. You know me, I love a good simple process that we can go through recursively, and so hearing something like this is really useful.
Thank you. I love talking to you, and I know that it works because I keep using it for me, and things have improved dramatically once I got the clarity. And my clients keep saying, "Oh," So you watch the results, and that's what makes us tick. You and I have similar feelings about results.
Yep.
Thank you, Gene.
I hope you found that conversation as useful as I did. I always love talking to Carol, and you hear me at the end of that interview mentioning how much I love a good process, and that's another good process that's easy for us to repeat and use over and over again. If you'd like more information about Carol, or you'd like to check out our many past interviews, she's been one of the most frequent guests on the show over the course of the last 12 years, all you need to do is go to tappingpodcast.com and then click on the link for episode 495. That's tappingpodcast.com. Click on the link for episode 495, and you will get Carol's contact information, as well as a list of all of the other interviews and conversations that we have had over the past. If there is someone in your life who could find a conversation like this being helpful, please be our ambassador, pass it along. It would mean the world to me, and it might be exactly what someone in your life needs today to move forward in a productive way. And even if they don't listen to the podcast, the simple fact you're reaching out to someone in your life saying, "Hey, I heard something today that will make your life better," just because you are thinking of them, you will have made their day a little brighter and a little better. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the podcast. In podcasting parlance, subscribe is always free. It's not like Netflix or Disney Plus or any of those other services. You can find the show in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pandora, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, literally everywhere you find audio. All you need to do is search Tapping Q&A. Once you are in there, click like, click subscribe, click whatever the functionality is inside of there, so that every single time a new episode comes out, you get it. Turn on the notifications so you don't miss them and miss this goodness. If you have a question, if you have a comment, if you have a topic you'd like us to cover at some point in the future, or someone you'd like me to interview, I can always be reached. Gene, Gene, at tappingqa.com. If you're on the website, click on that contact link. If you happen to be inside of that free Tapping Q&A app, which has hundreds of hours of tap-along audios, lots of scripts, interviews just like this inside of the app, if you click on contact, you can send me an email or a voice message from right inside of the app. The app is free. It's in the Android store. It's in the Apple App Store. It's a great way to get amazing, amazing tapping content with you all of the time. For the Tapping Q&A podcast, this is Gene Montrestelli. I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you real soon. Bye-bye. The Tapping Q&A podcast is copyright Gene Montrestelli Tapping Q&A. All views expressed by guests are those of the guests and not necessarily of Gene Montrestelli and Tapping Q&A.